Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Haley and I do reviews of classic books, Christian fiction, and general Christian books that I read, and I really try to focus on pointing out the content warnings in there and letting you know if a book is clean. I also like to do a lot of videos with homeschool resources or books that are good for kids to read, because that's a huge issue in our world right now, trying to find books that are good for kids to read and enjoy and that have good lessons in them. Typically, I try to do a lot of videos on different topics and ranking different categories, but recently I've only had time to do like monthly wrap-ups, but I'm going to try to do better in the future on posting smaller videos and more focused categories so that you guys can have better book recommendations. And also I might split up this long video, I might split it up into different reviews for each book so that you can easily find a video where I'm talking about a book. So let me know in the comments down below if that's something you're interested in, if that would be helpful if I posted those shorter clips of me talking about certain books. Okay, so today's video is the month of June in 2023 reading wrap-up. So everything I finished, not necessarily that I read, that I finished this month, because I finished a lot of book study kind of books, and so those all count for my page goal for this month. So in the month of June, I read 10 books, and those totaled 3,496 pages. I think that's the most pages that I've read so far this year. But like I said, I finished a lot of books, so it wasn't all this month, but I did feel like I was flying through some books at some points. So the first one that I finished is The Storm Before the Storm by Mike Duncan, and I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. It is the beginning of the end of the Roman Republic. So it goes through the history of why the Roman Republic ended and how it became an empire, which if you're like me, you kind of just think of Rome as Rome, but it was really fascinating to read this book and to see the different governments that came about throughout the history of Rome, and to see why it was so important that it became an empire with Julius Caesar, and how that plays into the Bible, because I was also doing a history class with my brothers, which I'll talk about that more later, but to see all of the Roman history and how it comes together. This was a very broad overview, so I didn't love it just because I'm more of a zoom in on one specific person or event kind of person. I like to read specific books. So it's harder for me to read like an overview, but obviously sometimes you need an overview. So I thought this book was good for what it was trying to do, and I listened to it and it wasn't too boring. A lot of the names get really confusing because there's a lot of names, but you at least are familiar with them and you've heard them before. So yeah, it really helped me with just all those political issues that were leading up to Julius Caesar, and even like the Pax Romana, and why that was such a big deal whenever you see just how tumultuous the politics in the country was before that. It helps to put everything in perspective. So if you are interested in reading about Roman history, I think this is a great book that can help launch you into that subject. The second book that I read is one that I did read in paperback, but I don't have it because I loaned it to my grandma, but you did see it in the last video I posted of my book haul. I got The Dwelling Place by Elizabeth Musser. I gave this one 4 stars, so this is the second book in the Swan House trilogy that she wrote. I really enjoyed the first one, and I think the second one I didn't enjoy it as much, but it's still up there like on the same level as the Swan House. So it's about Ellie, who's Mary Swan's youngest daughter, and she doesn't know her mother very well. She's never really connected with her or tried to understand her. Ellie just feels like her life has been terrible, her mother's life has been great, and why would she believe in God? Because all these bad things happen to her. And so her mother has cancer, and they think she is dying of cancer, and Ellie gets to be the one who is her caretaker. So she starts to form that relationship with her mom that she's never had. There was a lot of emotional moments in here, and I definitely teared up a few times. I think it was just really well written, and you really connected with the characters and what they were feeling, and those relationships that were being formed throughout the book. So the obvious plot of the book is that Ellie is very prideful and thinks that she has a much harder life than other people do. And so throughout the book you see her humbling herself and seeing the pain of other people instead of just focusing on herself. So that's really sweet. But secondary to that, you see God humbling Ellie and helping her to see her need for him. And I thought that was really cool because it was a really well written like conversion story. It wasn't cliche. It just throughout the whole book you see her being softened and softened, and just like this bad thing happening, this bad thing happening, and her coming to terms with certain things. You see God just really softening her heart, and it's really sweet and just really encouraging, I think, to read. Also, I liked that she didn't just believe in God so that she could get this guy or get a better life, as happens in a lot of the Christian fiction books. Like, believing kind of just fixes all her problems. No, she believed because she was convinced of that need for God. And then she did end up with a pretty gay guy at the end. There wasn't much of that, but they did have a sweet relationship, and that was cool to see. As far as content, it was just, the only thing that I really didn't like about it was, obviously she's taking care of her mom, who can't do a lot of stuff for herself. And over throughout the book, Ellie mentions the fact that her mother's body doesn't look right, and that she's just very emaciated and very small, yet she has this reconstructed chest and it just doesn't fit, which I guess it has to do with, you know, the whole cancer aspect, but I just felt like it was mentioned too many times, and I found myself thinking, does it have some special significance or a secondary meaning? I couldn't figure out. And then other than that, Ellie and some of her friends, they have a very bad past, and so there is things like drugs or rape brought up in the past. Nothing graphic or explicit, just talking about those circumstances that led to who these people are today and why they are hurting and why it's hard for them to trust people. So overall, if you're looking for Christian fiction that just has good relationships, like between mother and daughter, and just learning to trust people, I would recommend this book if that is your thing. Then the third book is The Edge of Belonging by Amanda Cox. I have read one other book by her, and I think she does a good job of writing. I just don't know that this kind of contemporary style is really my thing. And I read this at the beginning of the month and waited a while to write the review, so honestly I don't remember much about it. It is a sweet adoption story. She weaves a lot of different stories all together, and it is a past and present telling, and so that can get a little bit confusing, but I thought it was sweet to see like the things being revealed, and you have, you know, very broken people just all coming together and loving one another. And I did like the mentions of a pastor's family, and just seeing that side of it was cool. And the main, or the hero, Reese, he was pretty great, and I just liked the way that he was there to support her and be a good friend, even though a lot of the things were quite cliche. But as far as a like contemporary Christian romance with some adoption in there, this is a good book, and I don't really have much more to say about it. And then the next one is The Waterkeeper by Charles Martin. Okay, so I gave this one 3 stars, and I'm going to try not to talk a super long time about it, but this is a very complex book. Okay, so Charles Martin always takes a hard topic and writes about it. You may have seen my review on When Crickets Cry, which was very well written and so emotional. So I listened to The Waterkeeper, and I knew going into it that there was going to be quite a bit of content, because the plot of this book is that he is someone who goes and rescues girls who are being trafficked. So this goes along really well with the movie that just came out, The Sound of Freedom, and I think I wonder if Charles Martin was inspired by that man, because it seems very similar to that story. I think this is a very good book to read if you are an adult and you just need some awareness of what does go on in the world, and it really helped me to think about being aware of my surroundings and just having a healthy fear of the evil that is there out in the world. But also, I think it did a really good job of showing you that there is hope, that there are really kind men who sacrifice everything in their lives to rescue these poor children and women who are being taken away from their lives, sometimes against their will, sometimes, being lied to. And so it was just really sweet to see the main character doing that, and spending his life being so selfless, and to see his heart breaking for these people. There are a lot of plot twists on there. There was some of them that were a little bit predictable. I guess I could see some of the identity things, but it was just well written book that kept you wanting to read. And these people just have really messed up lives. All the connections and everything, you just see the sadness of what sin does to people's lives. And I don't like the love story in here. If you're looking for a good love story, Summer is just not a great character, in my opinion, and I didn't think that it felt very realistic. Like, the relationship wasn't built on much. But other than that, I think this was a really well-written book, and Charles Martin does do a good job of telling you these horrible things that are happening, but not in an explicit or graphic way, so it doesn't stick a picture in your mind. He just tells the facts of what is happening and who these people are, but doesn't dwell on it and spend too long talking about it. There is a lot of content in here, and I took this content warning from another reviewer on Goodreads. I asked her permission, and I thought she just did a really good job of laying it all out. So obviously there's a lot of emotions and hard stuff in here. There are suicide attempts, human trafficking, there's girls being abused, drug and alcohol abuse, violence, a lot of naked people, death and almost deaths, and then there were the beginnings of a few bad words. They weren't actually ever finished, but there's a girl who is drunk at one point and she doesn't have a very clean mouth. This book will leave you just feeling a lot of emotions, and almost like every Charles Martin book that I have read, you're not sure if you like it or not. It's well written, it opens your eyes to a part of the world that you didn't know about, makes you feel compassion and think about safety, but yet there's just a lot of stuff in there, and so I did end up giving this 3 stars, but that's not to say that I wouldn't recommend it. I would just only recommend it to a certain group of people who are looking for a book like this or something to go along with the Sound of Freedom movie. Okay, and then I read The Promised Land by Elizabeth Musser, and I ended up only giving this 2 stars. So this is the 3rd book in the Swan House trilogy, so I try to read both of them this month, or the last 2 that I hadn't read, and get them done with and be able to remember what the storyline was. So the plot of this one is Abby, who is Mary Swan's oldest daughter or second daughter, I can't remember, and she's a perfectionist and she's been trying to control everyone's life, micromanage it all. She ends up pushing everyone away from her husband, her sons, and it seems like everything is just falling apart. So she has to figure out how to get her life back together, and her solution is go to a Catholic counselor and walk the Camino. So not the solutions that are biblical or even useful. Does she learn how to let go and to live life? Yes, but is that going to last? Not following the solutions that she used in here. What was really annoying about this book is that the other 2 books were very focused on the relational aspect of, whether it's a romantic relationship or mother-daughter relationship. It did a really good job of portraying those. This was all just a spiritual book, and since I didn't agree with the viewpoints in here, it made it for a very tedious book to read because there was just a lot of spiritual talk and kind of psychological self-help type things, which I did not like. I did kind of like Caroline's story in here. It felt more relatable, but it was a very minor aspect, and then in the end I felt very disappointed and it didn't turn out the way that I liked. So I did not love this book. As far as content, one of the major plot points is that this person has lasting effects from this 1-week affair that she had, and it's not described at all, but it's still there and brought up a lot. And then as far as violence, there is another plot point that focuses around a girl who was abused and ended up dying. So if you're going to read this book, just look out for those things.